Hey everyone, how's it going? Juan Dhas here, and welcome to this week's YouTube lesson. So, this week I wanted to talk about harmonic fundamentals and stuff that I think guitar players really should know because most of our job is harmonic. As cool as the linear stuff is and as fun as it is to play, most of our work revolves around being a harmonic instrument. And I found that for players to really be functionally competent, and this is also from my own experience of just working and playing, having a certain set of chords really helps function in most musical scenarios. So let's talk specifics. We can group them into seventh chords and triads. We have drop twos, drop threes for our seventh chords. Yes, we have drop 2 and 4 as well, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. I want to talk about the core fundamentals. And then spread triads and close voice triads for our triad types. Now, in this video, I want to focus specifically on drop 2 and drop 3, because most of the time we'll be drawing from this vocabulary in our playing or in musical situations, and it's also kind of the building block, one of the core building blocks, if you will, for more advanced chords, or at least when I look at it and look at these chord shapes, they influence a lot of my other harmonic decisions. The core skeleton, if you will, are these chords. So I want to start with the theory because I think this actually helps contextualize and make sense of why drop voicings work for guitar, and also how drop voicings function, because I think a lot of people understand, okay, this is a drop 2, that's a drop 3, or they're aware of the chord shape, but they don't understand why it works, and as such, how it can function. So when I learned about drop voicings, I was aware of these chords, but I didn't know they fell into a category. And eventually, through studying and through arranging, I came to understand, oh, there's a drop 2, there's also something known as a drop 3. And I found this out in my arranging class for horns, and basically, when we think what it would do would be a way to spread out the voicing a little more to cover a little more harmonic space. And to the theory we were taught, to get to a drop voicing, if let's say we have a 4-way voicing, so a 4-way close voicing, where all the notes are within an octave, so 1, 2, 3, 4, low to high, you would take one of the notes and drop them an octave. So for drop 2, you would take your second highest voice and drop that an octave. For drop 3, you would take your third highest voice and drop that an octave. Or you can look at it as 1, 2, 3, 4, and drop the voicings accordingly. Drop 2 and 4, you would do the same concept. Now, when we're arranging for horns, it makes sense because you would start to realize because if you arrange for 4-way close and then you start incorporating these drop voicings, you realize how much harmonic ground you can cover with a horn section. Now, weirdly, the same thing applies to the guitar. And we'll see that the reason why most of the guitar vocabulary in jazz, or let's say a little more harmonically complex music, is based around drop voicings is because they're also easier to play for the most part. If we look at our close voicings, while this works, this is pretty accessible, the minute we start to invert the chords, we we start coming across some fingering problems, and they're not the most comfortable voicings to play, especially if you're playing them all the way down here. So this is why guitar players use drop voicings. They're very great stock voicings to build off of, and also they cover a lot of harmonic ground. For example, if we just take this chord, it's pretty well balanced. It's not too high, it's not too low, it sits comfortably in a mid-register and has a pretty even spread. Same with this. This one actually lets us cover some lower register, let's say if we're playing in a solo situation or somewhere where we need to cover a bit more of that low end, and we've still got some mid-range. And also, they can be used pretty high up on the register. And they give us, again, a nice spread, so to speak. It's not a really closed voicing, like closed voice triads, which kind of fit within a very specific sphere, if that makes any sense. So this is kind of why these voicings are so important. They're going to work in pretty much 90%, or I mean, it's an arbitrary figure, but pretty much any musical situation you can think of where you would find yourself playing seventh chords. Now, yes, eventually you will branch out, eventually you will explore different options, but these are a great starting point, and as I mentioned before, the building blocks. So the key is, okay, now we understand the theory. How can we incorporate these voicings? How can we start working on them? Well, for one, what I would suggest, it depends on which camp you fall into. If you have a little more experience with these voicings, then I would suggest trying chord cycles. If you're just kind of getting your feet wet and you're trying to figure out, okay, maybe I know the chord shapes, but I can't really access them, then I would suggest doing basic inversion work, but not in the way that most guitar players would conventionally go about working on their inversions. So most guitar players would start on a root position chord and then move through their inversions. Which is all well and good. It's great for mechanics, it's great for just getting the voicings under your fingers, but then eventually we have to start incorporating these voicings into our playing. And working on them always from the root, I've found, creates a slight problem because we're adding one extra step in being able to access each individual voicing. So what I found was a teacher recommended, okay, start from the lowest possible position on your guitar on any given string set. So let's say we're working on these drop twos, and we're working on them on the 5th string root in C major, and what we'd have to do is establish, okay, so let's say it's here, I still have a little bit more room, can we create a voicing that's an inversion below it? So yeah, we have a low B. What's the next note in the series? So if this was G, we moved down to an E. This was B, we moved down to a G. E, we moved down to a C. So yes, we do have an inversion available. Actually, it's third inversion. So then we would start our series from there. And then move right back down. Now where it really gets interesting is once you start shifting keys, you're going to start moving inversions for every key. So let's go up a 5th. Let's go to G. Oh, we start on first inversion instead of root. And to the octave. 5th up from that, D major. Okay, and try use the open strings as well. While we do have a low A, because of the G string, we don't have a low F sharp. So we have to start from third inversion. Then go up a 5th from that, will be an A. Now we can start in root position. How about if we were starting in E? then we would start in second. So you see what ends up happening is just by moving this to different keys, it forces us to start on a different inversion every time. Now this is foundational work, it's basic work. Eventually, once the voicings start feeling more comfortable, you would pick and choose voicings and start incorporating them into tunes. So you can start working on them in a functional context, in something that's musical, so it doesn't just end up feeling like an exercise. But we do have to put in this foundational work with some exercises in the first place so that we have our ground level, our base level, ready to go, basically. The same thing would apply to drop threes. Now, notice for drop twos, between the two lowest voices, you're going to have either a fifth or a fourth, which I guess you can think, if we think of like how this voicing sounds, it's a little more open than, let's say, a closed voice chord, but it's still pretty contained. And we have this voicing limit of a tenth. Drop threes are even wider. They have a voicing between the range of the lowest note and the highest note, we've got a twelfth. But we also have a larger interval between the two lowest voices. We have a seventh, and as we go through the inversions, we end up finding sixth. So what covering these voicings will do in major, minor, dominant, and minor 7 flat 5 contexts, this will give us more harmonic freedom, because now we kind of have a chord for any given situation. Are you playing in a duo with an upright player? Okay, you've got something. Are you playing duo with a singer or duo with a melodic instrument? Okay, then you might have to fall back on some of your drop threes to fill out some of the space that isn't there because you don't have a bass player. And obviously, as the combos get bigger, you'll pare your voicings down a little more, either by dropping the root or removing some notes. So I hope this lesson has been helpful for you guys and has given you some tools to work with and some new ways of practicing maybe some familiar concepts. Please do like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out a ton. And leave a comment if you have any topics in mind or want me to offer a perspective on something. I'm doing that perspective series that I started last week. Or if you just enjoyed the video. So take care, guys, and I'll see you in the next lesson.